To his online followers, he was a streamer known for outrageous content and unpredictable behavior. He was someone who constantly pushed the limits for views, donations, and attention. But behind the chaotic live streams and shock value persona, there was a growing pattern of recklessness that would end not with controversy, but with the death of someone inside his own home. Stanislav Reshetnyak, better known online as Stas Relay, was a Russian content creator who used platforms like YouTube and VK to broadcast live to his followers. His channel wasn't built around gaming or commentary. It revolved around extreme challenges, stunts, and humiliating dares suggested by viewers, who often paid money for him to perform them. Alcohol, aggression, and verbal abuse were common on his streams. Over time, he developed a reputation for taking things too far. He lived in the Moscow region with his girlfriend, 8-year-old Valentina Valia Grigorova. She occasionally appeared on his live streams, usually in the background or as part of the reckless dares he carried out. Some viewers noticed the way he spoke to her and the tone of the broadcasts, but online audiences often blur the line between entertainment and reality. To those watching from their screens, what happened in that house may have felt exaggerated, staged, or part of an act until it wasn't. On December 2nd, 2020, during one of his live streams, Stas had been drinking heavily on camera and was arguing with Valentina. At some point during the stream, he forced her outside of the house into sub-zero temperatures. She was reportedly wearing very little clothing. The night was freezing, and viewers watched as she remained outside for an extended period. This introduces a disturbing element. Some viewers allegedly encouraged this behavior with paid messages. When he eventually dragged her back inside, she was unconscious. Instead of calling for help, he kept the camera running. He continued screaming as he attempted to wake her up and positioned her on a couch. At one point, he spoke to the audience and claimed she wasn't breathing. He touched her skin and commented on how cold she was, still narrating everything for the viewers watching live. Imagine tuning into a live stream you thought would be another chaotic stunt, only to watch the aftermath of someone collapsing in the same room as the person filming. Some commenters began urging him to call an ambulance, while others reportedly continued treating the situation as entertainment. The line between audience and witness blurred in real time. Eventually, emergency services were called to the home. When paramedics arrived, they confirmed that Valentina had died, reportedly from hypothermia and exposure. Court files later stated that she had been outside for too long in freezing conditions, left vulnerable and unable to protect herself. The live stream footage, visible to anyone watching, became key evidence in the investigation. Stas was detained by Russian authorities shortly after her death. Prosecutors did not treat this as a simple accident. Instead, they built a case around negligence, endangerment, and abusive behavior. Investigators reviewed archived footage, social media activity, and testimonies from viewers who had seen earlier streams involving aggression and physical intimidation. The prosecution argued that his actions directly caused her death and that he failed to seek help in time. The trial took place in Ramamenki City Court. During the legal proceedings, the defense attempted to downplay intent, claiming the situation escalated unexpectedly. But the prosecution pointed to the fact that he locked her outside in dangerous conditions and continued streaming rather than intervening. Prosecutors emphasized the role of online culture and the monetization of cruelty. They argued his choices were not impulsive, but part of a pattern shaped by his streaming habits. In 2021, the court reached its decision. Stanislav Reshetnyak was convicted and sentenced to prison. He received 6 years in a high-security facility for causing her death through his actions and failing to provide aid. For Valentina's family, there was no real closure. Only the knowledge that what happened to her was seen live by strangers who could do nothing to help. This case raised alarms across Russia and beyond about the rise of trash streaming, a form of online content that thrives on humiliation, harmful acts, and dare-based escalation. Lawmakers began discussing restrictions and penalties for creators who broadcast harmful acts, especially when money is involved. The Russian parliament debated regulations requiring platforms to restrict dangerous live streams and hold individuals accountable for streamed abuse. What makes this story especially disturbing is that it unfolded in front of an audience. This wasn't an incident hidden behind closed doors. It played out step by step, with viewers watching a real person suffering in real time. Yet, the nature of these online spaces, anonymous chat messages, donation incentives, and desensitized reactions allowed it to continue long after it should have stopped. Valentina did not plan for her final moments to be broadcast to strangers. She was in a private home, presumably with someone she trusted, unaware that the audience he performed for would become silent spectators to her last night alive. And Stanislav, fueled by attention, alcohol, and a detachment from consequences, treated the situation like content until it was too late to undo any of it. Today, he remains incarcerated, and his channels have been removed or abandoned. But the footage and the details still circulate in news coverage and case studies about online exploitation. The legacy of this case isn't just about one person's death, it's about how far someone will go when a camera is on and a crowd is watching, and how quickly entertainment becomes evidence. When an audience pays for and encourages escalating harmful behavior online, at what point do the viewers stop being spectators and become participants in the tragedy that unfolds? To his online followers, Trevor Heitman, known as McSkillet, was living the kind of life many teenagers might dream about. He was a successful gaming YouTuber in his teens, gaining popularity through Counter-Strike global offensive content. His channel featured skin trading, gameplay videos, and commentary, attracting hundreds of thousands of subscribers and sponsorship deals. With that attention came money, fast cars, and an inflated sense of freedom that would eventually lead to devastation. Trevor built his online reputation quickly. He became known in the CS:GO community for showcasing expensive in-game skins and talking about trading methods. At one point, he was associated with gaming-related platforms, which helped him make a significant income. He bought a McLaren 650S, a luxury supercar with a top speed of over 200 miles per hour, something few teenagers ever touch, let alone own. But while his followers saw the cars, the flexing, and the confidence, other parts of his life were beginning to unravel. In early 2018, Trevor's accounts on several gaming platforms were reportedly banned for alleged involvement with unauthorized skin trading and market manipulation. He lost access to the digital economy that had built his brand and funded much of his lifestyle. How stable, one might ask, is a career built entirely on a digital economy that can be shut down in an instant? Friends later said he became withdrawn, frustrated, and unstable in the months after losing his main source of income. By August 2018, Trevor's behavior had changed noticeably. Witnesses reported incidents where he drove recklessly, and there were signs of emotional and mental strain. He had reportedly been involved in a school-related property damage case and was barred from campus. People close to him said he was acting unpredictable, but no one imagined that something catastrophic was coming. On August 23, 2018, he got behind the wheel of his black McLaren and drove southbound on the Interstate 805 inches, San Diego County. Witnesses later told investigators that he was speeding at over 100 miles per hour and driving the wrong way on the freeway. Some motorists swerved to avoid a collision. Others couldn't react in time. Trevor's vehicle crashed head-on into a Hyundai SUV carrying a mother, 3-year-old Alan Pizarro, and her 2-year-old daughter, Ariana. The impact caused a severe fiery collision that resulted in the immediate deaths of all three individuals. Cars behind them collided as they slammed brakes and tried to avoid the wreckage. The incident shut down the highway and sent emergency responders racing to the scene. When news broke that the wrong-way driver was McSkillet, the gaming community reacted with disbelief. For many, he was still remembered as a confident young creator who flaunted luxury cars and online earnings. The idea that he had caused the deaths of a woman and her child while driving the wrong direction seemed impossible to reconcile with the person they'd seen on YouTube videos. The investigation that followed confirmed the worst details. Authorities found no sign of braking before the impact, and they concluded that the driver acted with complete disregard for human life. While officials could not interview him due to his death, witnesses reported erratic driving leading up to the crash. Toxicology tests were conducted, though the speed and direction alone were the most critical factors. Aylin and her daughter were on their way to a regular day, entirely unaware of the danger that was coming toward them. Their family, devastated by the loss, spoke publicly about the tragedy. They described them as loving, joyful, and central to their lives. Their grief was heightened by the fact that the crash was not a small accident. It was violent, high impact, and absolutely preventable. The story gained national coverage, not just because of the crash, but because of Trevor's online fame and young age. People debated whether this was a mental breakdown, recklessness fueled by ego, or a deliberate act of self-destructive behavior. There was no trial. Trevor died on impact. But if he had survived, prosecutors said he would have faced multiple counts, including homicide, vehicular manslaughter with gross negligence, and possibly second-degree killing based on the speed and wrong-way driving. California law treats such incidents as crimes rather than accidents when they involve a knowing risk to others' lives. The reflective aftermath of this case is heavy. Imagine someone who rose to online influence at a young age, building status fast and losing stability just as quickly. Without visibility into the quiet collapse behind the scenes, no one saw the danger until it was too late. A crash like this was not only the end of his life, it was the end of 2 innocent lives, with no warning, no chance of avoidance, and no justice through the courts. Trevor's online legacy disappeared quickly after the crash. Sponsors removed his content, channels went dormant, and discussion shifted from admiration to mourning and anger. The Pizarro family became vocal about road safety and accountability for dangerous driving. Their grief turned into advocacy, speaking out so that people would remember the victims before remembering the driver. In the end, the story of McSkillet is not about fame or gaming or cars. It's about the reality that recklessness, when amplified by speed and opportunity, can destroy families in seconds. Those who watched his videos saw someone living fast. They never saw the crash until it happened, and by then, the damage could not be undone. When an online persona is built entirely on success and perceived invincibility, how can a community recognize the signs of a devastating real-world collapse before it's too late? Austin Jones was a YouTube singer who cultivated a clean, friendly image. Through pop covers and a cappella music aimed primarily at young audiences, he built a significant following. He toured, held meet and greets with fans, and presented himself as an approachable and safe figure in the online community. But while his public persona appeared harmless, his private behavior was drawing scrutiny, eventually leading to a federal investigation. Concerns about his conduct first surfaced around 2015. However, no formal charges were filed at that time. Jones publicly denied any wrongdoing and continued to upload videos, tour, and interact with his fan base. This gap in time raises a difficult question. In the creator economy, how does a community balance public denials against private concerns, especially when a dedicated fan base is involved? Then, in 2017, the investigation gained significant momentum. Federal agents uncovered chats and recordings. According to investigators, this evidence demonstrated that Jones had used his position of influence to pressure underage fans into sending him illegal, explicit content. Authorities were quick to state that this was not a one-time, isolated incident, but rather a documented pattern of behavior. In 2019, Austin Jones pleaded guilty in federal court. The prosecution's case was clear. They stated that he had leveraged his status as a public figure to manipulate minors. The presiding judge concurred, ruling that his online fame had been a tool that helped him gain access to the individuals he harmed. Consequently, he was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. The sentence also mandated that he register as a sex offender and be placed under strict supervision upon his release. Following the conviction, the collapse of his public-facing brand was swift and total. His YouTube channel went silent. Former collaborators publicly cut ties, and his once positive reputation was permanently erased. Parents, viewers, and fellow creators reacted with shock and anger, grappling with the realization that the image he had meticulously displayed online had concealed serious misconduct for years. Today, he remains in custody. His name is no longer associated with music, but with the severe consequences of abusing influence and trust. His case became a high-profile warning. A polished persona and digital fame do not provide immunity from legal accountability. When a creator's entire brand is built on approachability and trust, what systems can effectively protect young audiences from the person behind the persona? He was born into a well-known family, a person many might assume had every advantage. He was a recognized YouTube chef, the son of Spanish actors, and someone who built a public image around lifestyle, travel, and food. But behind the polished social media posts and videos, a situation was developing that would capture international headlines and leave investigators piecing together one of the most concerning incidents involving a digital creator in recent memory. Daniel Sancho Bronco came from a family with status and connections in Spain. His father, actor Sancho, and his mother, actress Silvia Brunallo, were both well established in the entertainment world. Daniel grew up in Madrid and eventually turned his interest in cooking into a digital brand. On social media, he built a reputation as a charismatic chef with polished videos, culinary tutorials, and travel content. His public persona was that of a carefree, stylish young man who seemed to be moving upward in his own career. But beneath that public image was a complicated personal life that would ultimately intersect with someone else's in a tragic and irreversible way. That someone was a 44-year-old Colombian plastic surgeon named Edwin Arrieta. The two men had known each other for some time and traveled together, with reports indicating a close and complex relationship. The exact nature of their association, whether business partners, friends, or something more, has been a subject of media discussion and judicial investigation. But what is certain is that their final trip together concluded with a tragic outcome. In late July 2023, the two met in Thailand, a country both had visited separately before. They checked into accommodations on Phangan, a popular island known for beaches and tourism. Edwin arrived first. Daniel followed shortly after. What happened next would be pieced together by police using surveillance footage, hotel logs, and Sancho's own statements. On August 2nd, 2023, Daniel Sancho walked into a police station in Phangan and reported that Edwin Arrieta was deceased, admitting his involvement. The details he provided to authorities reportedly concerned even seasoned officers. He claimed the fatal incident occurred during a confrontation inside their rented bungalow. Edwin's remains were subsequently found in multiple locations, including bags at a landfill and belongings disposed of around the area. Authorities determined that the actions leading to the death were intentional and methodical. Thai police moved quickly, gathering security footage from stores where Sancho was seen purchasing items like knives, cleaning supplies, and trash bags before the incident was reported. This raises an obvious question for investigators. Do these purchases indicate premeditation? They also recovered digital evidence from his phone and traced his movements using local CCTV. He was detained almost immediately after his report. Investigators concluded the incident involved planning rather than being a sudden, impulsive act. The case drew significant media attention in Spain, Colombia, and Thailand. Spanish outlets covered every development, with Sancho's parents flying to Thailand but maintaining limited public comment. Arrieta's family demanded justice, insisting that their loved one had trusted Sancho and had no idea he was in danger. Investigators noted that Sancho showed little emotion after being taken into custody. Court documents later revealed that he admitted to the act itself, but claimed it was not premeditated in the way prosecutors alleged. As the legal process began, Thai authorities charged him with premeditated killing and concealment of human remains. In Thailand, such charges carry severe sentences, ranging from life imprisonment to capital punishment. Prosecutors pushed for a severe penalty, arguing that the actions demonstrated clear intent. Sancho's defense argued that the situation escalated during a personal dispute, claiming fear and self-defense played a role. However, the prosecution contended that the evidence of prior purchases pointed toward deliberate preparation. The trial took place in Koh Samui Provincial Court, with international media closely following the proceedings. Arrieta's family attended hearings through representatives and publicly called for the maximum possible punishment. Spanish officials did not interfere, stating that the case fell entirely under Thai jurisdiction. The prosecution detailed the sequence of events, the handling of the remains, and the evidence collected from multiple locations. The defense struggled to counter the physical and digital proof presented by the prosecution. In August 2024, the court delivered its verdict. Daniel Sancho was convicted of premeditated killing and sentenced to life in prison. Capital punishment was reportedly avoided due to his partial cooperation and confession, but the court made it clear that the offense was severe and inexcusable. He was sent to Bang Kwang Central Prison, one of Thailand's highest security facilities, known for its strict environment and the long-term incarceration of individuals convicted of serious offenses. As of now, Sancho's legal team has discussed possible appeals or sentence reductions, but those options are limited and depend entirely on Thai legal procedures. The Spanish government may eventually request a transfer agreement, but such processes can take years and are not guaranteed. In Spain, public reaction has been divided between disbelief and condemnation. Many who once watched his cooking videos or followed his lifestyle content expressed shock that someone with apparent success would be involved in such an incident. This highlights a modern reality. How well do we truly know the public figures we follow? It's possible for an individual to build a carefully curated life online while hiding complex or concerning realities offline. Imagine being someone who followed his recipes, watched his travel clips, or saw him posing with friends and family, never knowing that such a situation would unfold. For Edwin Arrieta's family, this case was not about digital personas. It was about a life lost in a foreign place, far from home. They described him as a kind man with a strong career, someone who provided for his family and traveled frequently for work. The reflective close of this case lands on a sobering thought. How does someone transition from an influencer chef to serving a life sentence in a foreign prison, thousands of miles from everything they knew? With Daniel Sancho Bronco, the divide between public identity and private behavior became starkly clear. A life built on cameras, cooking, and curated moments ended in a courtroom. This outcome was not the result of an accident or a simple misstep, but because of a series of decisions that no amount of fame, family status, or digital followers could erase. When a person's public brand is built on an image of openness and lifestyle, what does it truly take to see the reality hidden behind the camera? Ethier, known to his followers as MJStation, built his YouTube career on a specific genre of content: shock value videos, 3A, M, challenges, haunted locations, and paranormal stunts, all aimed at a younger demographic. This style of content often relies on exaggerating danger and blurring the line between fiction and reality. But for Ethier, this pattern of behavior would eventually escalate beyond staged entertainment and into the real world. Even before the incident that led to his channel's collapse, he was reportedly known for trespassing into abandoned buildings and filming without permission. This behavior had already resulted in legal trouble, but it was a precursor to more serious issues. The incident that effectively ended his career occurred in early 2020. In an attempt to gain views, he faked his girlfriend's death. He proceeded to film and upload mourning videos, presenting this personal tragedy to his audience. The entire narrative collapsed when the girlfriend herself revealed that she was, in fact, very much alive. This raises a critical question. In the relentless pursuit of online attention, where is the ethical line drawn? And what is the cost of manufacturing trauma for clicks? After this deception was exposed, the situation turned more serious. The same girlfriend accused him of physical aggression and property damage. These allegations were not just online drama. They led to his arrest by Toronto police on formal charges of assault and mischief. The platform he relied on took decisive action. YouTube first demonetized his channel and then terminated it entirely. His attempts to return were met with further enforcement, as every new channel he created under different names was subsequently taken down. The legal case concluded with court-ordered restrictions on his conduct and contact. As a result, Ethier effectively disappeared from all mainstream platforms. His online persona, which was once built entirely around fake danger, ultimately collapsed under the weight of real-life consequences. His story serves as a clear warning about the dark side of attention-driven content. It demonstrates what can happen when deception escalates to the point of alleged criminal behavior. The audience moves on, and the legal system intervenes. When a creator's brand is built on pushing boundaries, how can platforms and viewers differentiate between harmless entertainment and the warning signs of real-world misconduct? He wasn't a household name, but in Las Vegas, creator circles, people knew who he was. Manuel Sin City, Manny Ruiz, built his identity around nightlife, social media content, and collaborating with other influencers. His videos showed parties, casinos, travel, and the fast-paced lifestyle associated with creators trying to make it big in Nevada. But whatever persona he crafted online was soon shattered when his name appeared in headlines, connected to a fatal incident that stunned the local entertainment community. Manuel was active in the Las Vegas content scene, often appearing alongside other small creators who focused on lifestyle, music, clubs, or streaming culture. He wasn't working with millions of followers, but he operated in a circle where content, ego, and public image were highly valued. Around him were fellow creators, chasing a similar dream: build an audience, grow a brand, and make something out of the nightlife media scene. This raises a familiar question. In an environment so focused on perception, how much pressure exists beneath the surface? Before we analyze the suspicions in the case, please let me know where you saw this video. I will read it all and spread it around the world. And don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel to be the first to receive notifications when there are new videos. What happened on the night of the incident reportedly didn't come from nowhere, at least not to those who were present. The events unfolded in October 2023 at the popular MGM Grand area on the Las Vegas Strip. Several creators, including two men Ruiz knew personally, were in the area as part of a meetup tied to local filming and nightlife content. At some point, an argument broke out between Ruiz and the two other creators. The precise cause, whether it was personal drama, business tensions, jealousy, or something else, was not immediately clear. But what is certain is that the situation escalated quickly. Witnesses reported raised voices, shoving, and then the sound of gunfire. The two other creators sustained fatal injuries. The Las Vegas police were on the scene within minutes, and surveillance cameras in the vicinity captured multiple angles of the confrontation and its aftermath. When officers arrived, Ruiz had already left the area. Authorities issued an alert to locate him and requested tips from the public. Within days, he was tracked down and arrested. Prosecutors moved quickly, filing serious charges: 2 counts of homicide, with the possibility of additional enhancements for the use of a firearm and for committing the act in a densely populated public space. Clark County officials described the incident as an act of targeted violence in an area filled with bystanders. They emphasized that both victims were reportedly unarmed and that the incident was not random. Ruiz knew them. Reports stated that the conflict stemmed from a personal and professional dispute that had been building offline, despite any public-facing appearances of collaboration. Once in custody, Ruiz was formally charged. Prosecutors confirmed they would consider seeking the death penalty, citing the double fatality and the circumstances surrounding the case. Nevada is one of the states where prosecutors can pursue capital punishment, particularly in cases involving multiple victims. The prosecution argued that the intent was clear, and the setting, one of the busiest tourist hubs in the country, made the actions even more reckless. As news of the case spread across Las Vegas creator networks, reactions were divided. Some people who had collaborated with Ruiz in the past expressed shock, stating they didn't believe he was capable of such an act. Others reportedly admitted privately that he had a temper and often treated other men in the scene as rivals. This paints a picture of a digital world built on perception and ego, where offline grudges may have had room to grow beneath the surface. In early court hearings, the prosecution laid out the basic facts. The victims were found with multiple gunshot wounds. Witnesses identified Ruiz, and security footage reportedly supported their version of events. His defense attempted to argue self-defense, claiming the confrontation was physical and that he feared for his safety. However, investigators found no evidence that either victim had a weapon or initiated lethal force. Law enforcement also pointed out that Ruiz fled the scene rather than calling for help or remaining, an action that can be challenging for a self-defense claim. In Nevada, fleeing after such an incident is often treated as evidence of consciousness of guilt, unless proven otherwise. Prosecutors emphasized that this was not an accident or a chaotic shootout, but a directed attack. While no final sentencing has yet been handed down, Ruiz is being held without bail. The state is pursuing 2 counts of open homicide, and the possibility of the death penalty or life without parole remains active. If convicted on both counts without plea negotiations, his chances of release would be effectively 0. The families of the victims have spoken publicly about the loss, describing both men as young creators with plans, projects, and growing audiences. They were not global celebrities, but they were real people who had built communities online and offline. For their families, the pain is intensified by the fact that someone from their same circle, the creator world they were part of, was allegedly responsible for their deaths. Imagine being part of an online community where you collaborate with people, film with them, appear in each other's videos, and attend events, only to discover that one of those familiar faces is accused of taking the lives of 2 others. The incident reportedly made many small creators rethink who they spent time with and how quickly digital relationships can intersect with real-world conflict. The reflective takeaway from the Manuel Ruiz case is that a public image doesn't shield anyone from human conflict, especially when ego, rivalry, and emotion collide in a high-pressure environment. In the pursuit of fame and relevance, some creators push limits online, but in this case, the alleged violence happened offline, and the cost was irreversible. Ruiz's name, once tied to nightlife media, is now permanently attached to one of the most shocking incidents involving a creator in Las Vegas history. The Strip, flooded with tourists and influencers chasing opportunity, became the scene of an incident that demonstrated how thin the line can be between performance and reality. In a culture defined by public personas and competition, how do we distinguish between professional rivalry and a genuine threat before it's too late? Mike and Heather Martin, known online as DaddyOFive, ran a YouTube family prank channel built around their children. At first, the videos looked like chaotic family humor to some, but over time, the content took on a disturbing tone. Their pranks frequently involved yelling, simulated punishments, and scenarios that clearly caused emotional distress, often leaving the children crying, scared, or humiliated on camera for an audience. This pattern of content raised alarms. Viewers began reporting the channel after seeing children visibly upset in multiple videos. A major turning point came when creator Philip DeFranco exposed the situation, compiling and showing clips where the children begged for the pranks to stop. This broadcast triggered widespread public outrage and, critically, brought the channel to the attention of Child Protective Services. Before we analyze the suspicions in the case, please let me know where you saw this video. I will read it all and spread it around the world. In 2017, authorities in Maryland opened an investigation. Consequently, 2 of the youngest children, Cody and Emma, were removed from the home and placed in the custody of their biological mother. Mike and Heather Martin were subsequently charged with child neglect, and both pleaded guilty. As a result of their plea, they received 5 years of probation. The court's ruling also mandated the loss of custody of the 2 children and restricted the parents from contact without supervised approval. The online fallout was just as significant. Their original channel, DaddyOFive, was removed. A later attempt to rebrand as Family05 was also swiftly taken down. The case became one of the first major examples of family vloggers facing severe legal consequences for exploiting children on camera. It forced a difficult, industry-wide conversation about consent, ethics, and the use of children for profit in the digital age. The lasting message was clear. The Martins' bid for viral fame, in the eyes of the court, had crossed the line into emotional harm. The fallout cost them their channel, their income, and the custody of their children. This case set a significant precedent, but it leaves a complex question for our modern media landscape. When a child's life becomes a source of family income, who holds the ethical responsibility to protect that child's well-being? He built his image on confidence, charisma, and fame across multiple platforms. Ray Diaz was an actor turned influencer who used Instagram, YouTube, and streaming platforms to grow his following. To many, he was the kind of creator who lived in the world of luxury aesthetics, fitness, cars, nightlife, and entertainment. But beneath the surface, a different version of him was emerging through allegations, leaked videos, and eventually, criminal charges. Ray got his start as a model and actor, appearing in ads and small television roles before shifting into the digital creator space. His following grew through vlogs, fitness content, lifestyle posts, and collaborations with other creators. He branded himself as motivational and disciplined, someone who understood success and status. But people close to him began to see patterns that didn't match the persona he presented online. Before we analyze the suspicions in the case, please let me know where you saw this video. I will read it all and spread it around the world. The first sign of serious concern came when a young girl appeared on live streams with him, calling him controlling and aggressive. Viewers who saw the footage noticed his tone, his temper, and how he responded when she cried. This raises a challenging question for the digital age. When does a passive audience become a potential witness? Instead of dismissing it as drama, some contacted authorities and child protective services. Not long after, videos were leaked that showed him shouting and behaving in a physically aggressive manner, raising serious alarms. The girl involved was a teenager who had been spending time with him at his home. She later told investigators that he controlled her movements, told her what to post, and isolated her from others. She claimed he manipulated her into believing she belonged with him romantically. Friends and witnesses described behavior that sounded less like mentorship and more like possession. When police became involved, Ray denied wrongdoing. He claimed the leaked clips were part of an act, taken out of context, or staged for social media. Investigators didn't accept those explanations. The Los Angeles police opened an official case, and more people began coming forward with statements about his behavior, many describing a pattern of psychological and physical control. In July 2019, Ray Diaz was arrested in California on charges related to child endangerment and assault. Investigators cited multiple instances in which he had harmed or threatened minors, along with accounts of restricting their freedom. The charges were serious, with prosecutors arguing that his influence and status were used to take advantage of vulnerable people. Authorities reviewed his social media and phone records, uncovering conversations that contradicted his denials. Evidence included messages and voice recordings that suggested manipulation, intimidation, and efforts to prevent victims from speaking out. Witnesses told authorities that he warned them not to contact police and threatened consequences if they tried to leave. As coverage of the case spread, the entertainment and influencer community distanced itself from him. His online accounts were either closed or abandoned, brand partnerships were severed, and his public presence faded. Instead of being known for lifestyle content or acting, he became known for the allegations that led to his arrest. The legal process took time as new testimonies and evidence surfaced. Prosecutors built their case around coercion, grooming-type behavior, and physical harm. Defense attorneys tried to argue that interactions were exaggerated or misinterpreted, but the seriousness of the claims paired with the recordings and witness statements outweighed attempts at dismissal. He was ultimately charged with crimes tied to violence and endangering minors. His sentencing reflected that the court viewed his actions not as isolated incidents, but as part of a pattern he maintained while presenting himself as a public figure. While specific sentence details varied by count, the overall result placed him under supervision and legal restriction, including limitations on contact with minors. Imagine being a fan who watched his fitness routines or motivational content, unaware of what was happening off-camera. The contrast between who he pretended to be and who he was behind closed doors is part of what shocked the public. In the world of online fame, a creator can curate their image so completely that their real life becomes invisible until someone breaks through the surface. Today, Diaz is no longer active in mainstream entertainment or the creator space. The charges, investigations, and public fallout overshadowed everything he built online. When a public figure's brand is built on trust and inspiration, what responsibility do platforms and audiences have to look closer when signs of harm appear? He didn't present as someone planning to end 3 lives. To observers, he appeared to be a quiet grocery store employee working the night shift. But behind that silence was a years-long spiral that those around him reportedly did not see coming. Stair, who also used the name Andrew Blaze online, grew up in Pennsylvania in what most would describe as a typical suburban environment. As a child, he was quiet, introverted, and deeply drawn to animation and online content creation. Teachers later recalled him as disconnected but not threatening, someone who didn't stand out enough to cause specific concern during his high school years. While other students were building friendships and making plans for the future, Stair withdrew further. He spent the majority of his time online developing fictional characters. He established YouTube channels and created animations that began to reflect a more complex inner world. At the time, most viewers likely did not realize just how personal this content was. It raises the question, how do we differentiate between creative expression and a cry for help in the digital age? Before we analyze the suspicions in the case, please let me know where you saw this video. I will read it all and spread it around the world. To his co-workers at the Wise Markets in Eaton Township, he was known simply as the quiet overnight shelf stocker. He caused no trouble, generated no complaints, and showed no obvious signs of what was to come. But while he maintained this calm exterior at work, he was simultaneously constructing a detailed fantasy life online. Under the persona Andrew Blaze, he uploaded numerous videos using cartoon characters he had designed. The tone of this content gradually shifted from eccentric to concerning, with increasing references to ending lives, destruction, and a detachment from reality. He began creating digital journals, audio recordings, and videos where he discussed plans to end his own life and the lives of others. It appears that in his perspective, he was not simply a worker at a grocery store. He was a character in a final narrative that he himself was writing. The night of June 8, 2017, began like any other late shift. Stair arrived at Wise Markets before midnight, quiet as usual. What was not apparent to anyone was that earlier that night, he had taken steps to block the store's exits with pallets and carts, seemingly to prevent escape. He had brought 2 shotguns, which he had purchased legally, concealed in a duffel bag. He had recorded videos beforehand explaining that this was the end and that he felt no connection to the world. He spoke in detail about his intentions around 12:50 a.m. He walked to the back of the store where his unsuspecting co-workers were performing their duties. Without warning, he discharged the firearms. 3 of his co-workers, Terry Sterling, 63, Brian Hayes, 47, and Victoria Brown, 26, lost their lives inside the store. Another employee managed to hide and contact emergency services. Stair continued moving through the aisles before inflicting a fatal injury upon himself as police arrived outside. The incident lasted only a few minutes, but investigators would later uncover evidence of months, and perhaps even years, of planning. He had prepared audio messages, videos, and written notes detailing his intentions. He had posted concerning animations, suggesting a desire to leave behind a specific legacy. Some of these files were scheduled to upload automatically after his death. What authorities uncovered was not a sudden, impulsive act. It was, instead, something methodically planned and documented by an individual who seemed to no longer believe he was part of the real world. When investigators and media outlets studied his extensive online footprint, they began to recognize how many warning signs had been hidden in plain sight. His YouTube content had become increasingly dark, filled with themes of large-scale harm, mortality, and fictional afterlife fantasies. He had created an animated world where he seemed to believe he would exist after ending his life and the lives of others. Journal entries showed he had considered different dates and methods for his plan. Ultimately, the grocery store, where he had been employed for 7 years, became the location he settled on. He wrote that this act involving his co-workers would seal his story. The legal investigation focused heavily on digital evidence, as the person responsible was deceased at the scene. Authorities meticulously reviewed store surveillance footage, his personal computer files, audio logs, and unlisted YouTube uploads. Prosecutors concluded that if Stair had survived the incident, he would have faced multiple counts of first-degree murder and aggravated assault. The legal outcome would almost certainly have been life in prison without parole, or potentially a capital sentence. However, because he ended his own life, there was no trial, no defense, and no opportunity for the victims' families to face the individual responsible in a court of law. In the aftermath, the families of Terry Sterling, Brian Hayes, and Victoria Brown demanded answers from the grocery chain. This raised significant questions about workplace security measures, mental health awareness in professional environments, and how an employee could bring firearms into the building without detection. Wise Markets made the decision to permanently close that specific store location following the tragic event. Community members held vigils, and the shock of the incident resonated within the small town long after national media coverage faded. As planned, his scheduled online uploads began appearing after the event, revealing just how methodically he had planned not only the act itself, but also the narrative surrounding it. Authorities requested that social media platforms remove his content, but some files circulated online before they could be fully taken down. In one recording, he made it clear that he was not concerned with who heard his message, only with fulfilling a fantasy he had cultivated through prolonged online isolation and fixation. Compounding the tragedy, there were no red flags reported by family members beforehand. His parents later stated they had no idea he owned firearms or was planning any harmful actions. He had never previously been arrested, had never made public threats, and had reportedly never sought psychiatric help. What made this case particularly disturbing to analysts was the extent to which his mindset had been documented online, apparently without those in his physical life realizing its severity. Today, Randy Stair's case is often brought up in discussions regarding digital extremism, internet isolation, and the potential dangers of private online worlds operating without intervention. His writings revealed an individual who seemed to reject human connection entirely. He apparently convinced himself that only through this destructive act could he transition into the fictional universe he had created. The individuals who lost their lives were not personal enemies. They were co-workers who happened to be present when he decided to enact his plan. This leaves a lingering question. How can someone exist alongside others every day, relatively unnoticed, while cultivating a plan so harmful and personal? Consider the scenario. Working a quiet night shift with someone you barely speak to, unaware that they have already made a decision that will impact your fate. This story is not just about a workplace incident. It's about a mind that detached from reality while the world continued as normal. The store is gone. His online content has been mostly removed from major platforms, and the families affected continue to live with the consequences of an act they never saw coming. Randy Stair positioned himself as the main character in a world that no one else believed in, and 3 innocent people lost their lives as a result of his distorted perspective. This case forces us to confront a difficult reality about the modern world. In an age of digital isolation, how can a society bridge the gap between a person's hidden online life and their public actions before it's too late? He built a following by making people laugh. His impressions of celebrities, especially the ones modeled after crime dramas and mob characters, earned him millions of views across TikTok and YouTube. To fans, Ali Abulaban, better known online as JinnKid, was a rising digital star. But behind the screen, his personal life was deteriorating faster than anyone could see, and the final outcome would be as tragic as it was irreversible. Before his content went viral, Ali was a military kid who moved often. He used humor to fit in and eventually discovered that short-form videos gave him a platform. TikTok and Instagram became the main hubs for his comedy skits, voice impersonations, and pop culture parodies. His impressions of Tony Montana and characters from crime movies helped him gain hundreds of thousands of followers. Later, he expanded into YouTube and grew an even larger audience. To his viewers, he appeared confident, funny, and charismatic, a natural entertainer with a growing online brand. Off-screen, he had married a woman named Anna, and the two had a daughter together. The family lived in a high-rise apartment building in San Diego, where they appeared, at least from the outside, to be living well. But their relationship had been rocky long before anything made headlines. Arguments escalated over time, and jealousy became a flashpoint. Friends would later say that he struggled with control and anger, especially when it came to his wife's independence. Before we analyze the suspicions in the case, please let me know where you saw this video. I will read it all and spread it around the world. In early October 2021, their marriage reached a breaking point. Anna asked him to move out of the apartment after repeated conflicts. He relocated to a hotel but reportedly did not fully accept that the relationship was ending. According to investigators, he remained paranoid and consumed by the idea that Anna might be seeing other people. Instead of dealing with the separation privately, he began secretly monitoring her. Shortly before the incident, Ali allegedly went back to the apartment while Anna was gone and made a copy of a key. He also allegedly installed a listening device on his daughter's iPad so he could eavesdrop on what was happening inside the home. This level of monitoring raises a critical question. At what point does personal conflict cross the line into methodical, pre-criminal behavior? On October 21st, he claimed to have heard a man's voice in the background through the audio feed. That man was later identified as Baron, a friend of Anna's. That moment, according to prosecutors, triggered the final act. Ali drove back to the apartment building that afternoon. Security footage captured him entering the elevator and heading upstairs. Once inside his unit, he confronted the two of them. Prosecutors said there was no argument, no pause, and no attempt at conversation. He was armed, and within moments, both Anna and Reburn sustained fatal injuries from the firearm. Authorities stated that the nature of the wounds indicated intent at close range. After leaving the scene, Ali picked up his daughter from school. During that time, he reportedly called his mother and confessed to his actions. Police were dispatched to the apartment after a 911 call suggested a serious incident had occurred. When officers arrived, they found both victims unresponsive and declared them deceased at the scene. Ali was arrested later that day on a San Diego freeway without further incident. News of the case spread instantly, partly because of his online fame and partly because the incident fit the framework of a domestic double homicide. The persona fans saw online did not resemble the man described in court documents. During the initial hearings, prosecutors argued that the actions were premeditated. They pointed to the copied key, the surveillance device on the tablet, and the speed with which he entered the apartment before discharging the weapon. Ali pleaded not guilty. His defense claimed he was emotionally unstable, overwhelmed, and not thinking clearly. But prosecutors emphasized the deliberate nature of the act and the fact that his wife had previously told him to leave the home. There were also reported signs that she was seeking separation and independence. Friends later testified that Anna had expressed fear of him and believed his anger was reaching a dangerous level. The court denied him bail. During pre-trial appearances, he showed little visible emotion. His daughter, too young to understand the full scope of what had happened, was placed in the care of relatives. The case continued to attract media coverage as the legal system slowly moved forward. Family members of both victims described the loss as devastating, senseless, and permanent. They asked for the maximum sentence and highlighted the pain caused by his actions. Because the incident occurred in California, prosecutors pursued 2 counts of first-degree killing with special circumstance allegations, a charge that allows for a possible sentence of life without parole. They described the incident as an execution carried out in the privacy of a home, not a spontaneous act of passion. Each detail presented in court strengthened the perception that this was not a momentary loss of control, but a planned act. As of now, he remains in custody awaiting final judgment, with court proceedings extended due to evidence review, psychological evaluations, and motions filed by both sides. The prosecution's stance is firm. The act was intentional, calculated, and final. His defense has explored angles related to mental state and emotional breakdown, but the weight of physical evidence heavily favors the state's perspective. What makes the case especially haunting is the disconnect between his online persona and reality. Viewers saw the entertainer who impersonated movie villains and laughed into the camera. How often, one might ask, do we mistake a performance for a personality? Friends describe someone who switched moods depending on who was watching. Behind closed doors, a deteriorating relationship, suspicions, and escalating arguments created an environment that ended in irreversible harm. Imagine watching someone online who appears ambitious and charismatic, someone you might see in memes or impressions, and then learning that off-camera, a double homicide unfolded in a space meant to be home. It forces a deeper question. How well do audiences actually know the people they follow? The reflective truth of the Ali Abulaban case is that influence does not equal stability, and visibility does not prevent tragedy. He was not a man hiding in obscurity. He was public, recognizable, and building a brand. Yet none of that stopped the collapse of judgment that ended 2 lives and destroyed his own in the process. His daughter grows up without either parent. The families of both victims live with the outcome of a decision made in minutes, but reportedly built on years of unresolved control and resentment. The trial will eventually deliver a final sentence, but the story is already complete in its most important detail. 2 people lost their lives in what should have been a private home, and the man allegedly responsible built an audience online who never imagined he would be capable of it. When the lines blur between an entertainer's public character and their private life, where does the responsibility lie for recognizing genuine distress before it escalates to tragedy? Thank you for watching until the end of the video. Your time, attention, and curiosity are what make this space possible, a place dedicated to examining the most complex, mysterious, and unsettling cases from around the world. Today, we explored facts, testimonies, and theories that challenge not only our understanding of justice, but also our perception of human nature and the systems that sometimes fail to provide answers. What do you think about this case? Do the explanations presented make sense to you, or do you believe there are still hidden truths waiting to be uncovered? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective helps enrich this conversation and build a thoughtful community where every opinion counts. Tell us what stood out to you the most, what made you question things, or what moved you personally. If you found this content insightful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss future uploads. Each week, we bring you new cases, deep investigations, and detailed analyses aimed at understanding what truly lies behind these stories. Thank you for being part of a community that looks beyond headlines and seeks to understand the truth with empathy and critical thinking. We'll see you in the next video with more cases, more analysis, and more truth. Until then, take care and remember, sometimes the truth is closer than it seems.